To best understand the present November 1981 world crisis, it is necessary to turn history back for almost a century, back to when Edison invented the electric lamp and the direct current generator. J.P. Morgan Sr., the economic power structure giant, was the first to act upon the realization that whoever developed, manufactured, installed, and controlled the physical energy generators and the metered energy distribution and cutoff system could and would control the national economies into which they were physically introduced. The air we breathe was everywhere so plentiful that its availability could not readily be monopolized. There were too many ponds, lakes, rivers, brooks, and wells to make the metered water supply systems a generally monopolizable business. When Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone, it had to compete with the post office, conducted mail, and required far greater numbers of employees. Morgan saw that the copper mines and the electric equipment manufactured from copper, as well as all the power generating companies, involved the least labor participation and the then maximally profitable business. All of the foregoing required the availability and controllability of an utterly unprecedented magnitude of physical apparatus and installation of otherwise unemployed monetary wealth. The patents of Edison's inventions and an army of astute lawyers and brokerage houses became the pivotal legal precedent accepted economic properties and workforce in amassing the initial procurement capital of Morgan's power monopoly. This initial capital amassing was greatly augmented by selling interest-bearing bonds to widows and trust funds in general, seemingly safely secured by the vast lands given as a grateful USA people's government as a subsidy to the pioneer railway building and operating companies. The railroad company bonds were secured by the seemingly highly valuable real estate adjacent to all the railroad cross-country rights-of-way, their way station, town properties, railway stations, trackage, etc., which railroad company bonds were purchased for widows and trust funds in general by their trustees. This capital amassing initially financed the electric power companies. As we have noted elsewhere, these railroad bonds became worthless in the 1929 economic crash. Nobody wished to buy the old depot buildings, etc. When the automobiles and the auto trucks took so much business from the railways as to render the railroad passenger systems profitless, and cross-country pipeable petroleum replaced coal as a prime fuel, and giant transoceanic tankers were developed, and the Middle East oil lands were explored and developed, the petroleum business rose swiftly to become the maximum economic power giant of the 20th century, outpowering the Morgan utilities and banks-based system. The number of kilowatts of electric energy being generated from each BTU of fossil fuels burned or foot-pounds per second of water-power-derived turbine functioning has continually increased since the very beginnings of electric power generation and distribution. Concurrently, the weight of the production and distribution equipment to produce that power rapidly decreased per each kilowatt or horsepower of energy produced and delivered. As a consequence of this never-ceasing technological increase in overall efficiency, the actual overall cosmically predicated costs of energy generation have always and only decreased, and cost increases have been the consequence of those in top power positions contriving through pricing to be able to pay ever greater dividends to shareholders, and thus to increase the stock market value of their own shares, thus, in turn, to increase their power to control the amassed money of others as capital. Such capital power manipulation is intoxicating and seemingly unchallengeable. However, as with all socioeconomic political power evolution, the politically appointed public service commissions in all the states have consistently granted even higher kilowatt-hour price rates to the privately owned, deceptively named public service companies producing the electric power. So unchallengeably powerful are the public service commissions that in 1981 and 1982 they have been able to allow great utility companies to abandon some $900 million wasted by utility companies as they abandon their partially finished atomic energy plants on the U.S. West Coast, charging the loss to the consumers by increasing their rates. This results in private enterprise making a $900 million bad gamble and having the capability of passing on their loss to the public. The constant fundamental operating cost reductions combined with constant price increases have produced so much money that the power-generating businesses are amongst the wealthiest and most invisible of the politically manipulative organizations. After World War II, the electric power industry's 3/4 of a century accumulated wealth successfully combined its political power with that of the oil giants to take over for nothing the total atomic energy program assets. This included all of the know-how and production apparatus of the U.S. government's military atomic energy program, for which development the U.S. citizens had paid $150 billion. This amassing of political power coincided with a generally dawning awareness of U.S. youth in general and an ever-increasing percentage of the mature U.S. electorate regarding the corruption of the political representatives of theretofore trusted democratic government. This corruptibility is inherent in the fact that the TV electronic campaign costs of USA elections now amount to $50 million for the presidency, $10 million for a senatorship, and $5 million for a congressional seat. This corruptibility is enhanced by the U.S. Supreme Court's hang-fire-no ruling of 1981, which will allow unlimited money to be spent in the next election years. The now-gone supranational corporate giants have always known that the fossil fuels can and will become exhausted. To meet this contingency, their post-World War II, last third of a century grand strategy has been to force the U.S. government to develop superior atomic war capability, knowing full well that atomic warfare will terminate human occupancy of planet Earth, which fact would eventually force the government to abandon its war use. First and foremost, however, the power monopoly would have to have accomplished their public service atomic energy objective, first of becoming contractors to operate government atomic facilities, second of siphoning off from the U.S. government all the latter's atomic scientist personnel and all the invisible know-how to develop world-around atomic energy plants to feed into their wired and metered energy monopoly system as the petroleum source diminished and approached depletion. In the meantime, while maintaining their power over the USA and other political systems, their grand strategy found it necessary to have the USA and Western world populations satisfied that the USA was successfully maintaining its fighting superiority over the USSR by producing more atomic bombs than the Russians.